moderator, Ms. Rakhee Malik, Director and Head HR, Kearney, India. Ms. Rakhee has had an illustrious career spanning 23 years in the field of human resource management across leading firms in management consulting and knowledge services like McKinsey and WNS Global Services. She was awarded the Women Super Achiever Award by the World HRD Congress in 2016, Most Influential HR Leader in 2017, Exceptional Woman of Excellence by Women Economic Forum in 17, and Iconic Women Creating a Better World for All in 2020. She is also leading and chairing YLC National Mentorship Program. Welcome, Rakhee ma'am, and thank you for joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rashmi, for the warm welcome. I'm very happy to be here and to have this opportunity to moderate the session today. I'm joined by two very senior colleagues and experts from the fraternity, and it's my honor and pleasure to introduce both of them to you. So let me start by introducing first Mr. Kartik Rao, who's CHRO MYGlamm. And as you know, MYGlamm is one of the biggest D2C online brand with about 800 products. And there was some very exciting news about some acquisitions that MYGlamm has done today, which I will not talk about, and perhaps Kartik will talk about it as we move forward. He's currently the Chief of Staff and Head of HR with Bewakoof.com, which is the parent company for MYGlamm. And in his current role, he's responsible for driving financial management, executive communications, culture, people program, leadership team strategies and alignment. And his role really cuts across business and HR in terms of creating purposeful teams, delivering stellar business results, and just leading the entire strategy around innovation. So very warm welcome, Kartik, to the session today.
Thank you, Rakhee. Just one correction, Bewakoof is not. I think GoodGlamm Group is the parent company of MYGlamm.
All right.
And yeah.
So all right, I stand corrected. Yeah. Thanks, Kartik. Okay, I also have the pleasure and privilege of introducing the next panelist, which is Mr. Nishant Gaharwar, and please correct me if I've got the surname wrong. He's the people head for a leading OTT platform. All of us are aware and in love with the OTT platforms. The last 2 years have kind of created a special place for OTT platform and all the content that we get. Nishant serves as head of people at this leading OTT platform, and previously he was also the country human resources director India at Uber. So welcome, Nishant.
Thank you, Rakhee. And you did 8 on 10 on my surname. So most of my friends, even they don't go beyond 5 on 10. So thank you. Just for record, my surname is pronounced as Gaharwar.
Gaharwar.
The W is pronounced as V. I do not know how, but that's how it is. But so thrilled to be here in this August gathering, and thank you for having me.
Super, excellent. So let me get started. Like Rajni said, today's topic very exciting, very pertinent in terms of digital transformation, and there's been a lot of conversation, and digital seems to be the buzzword. But I think we're in a time where we've seen an escalation of everything and anything which could be digitized or digitalized. And it's being said that the global digital leaders are really driving the economies right now. So with that thought in mind, and really thinking about how we can, as HR leaders, look at creating digital platforms or supporting digital transformation or leading it. But in doing that, how do we enable the human aspect of digital? So let me start by starting this conversation and asking you a couple of questions. So let me start by asking Nishant. So Nishant, what are some of the new tech innovations that you've done in your organization, and have you seen any impact of those innovations yet?
Yeah, I think so topical. No? Yeah, so Rakhee and everybody on the call today. So we have been working remotely for a year and a half now. I remember it like it was yesterday. 17th March is when we started. 16th March was my last day in the office premises. And 17th March 2020 onwards, we have been in a work from home scenario. in that time frame, our organization's grown more than 60%, which means that onboarding employees remotely and helping them become productive in a remote way has been super duper important. And so the first set of kind of things that we had to really digitize and automate and do stuff remotely was really this whole onboarding. Because as many of you know, there are segments of the economy, unfortunately, that are really down. And there are segments, and I'm thankful that I belong to a segment like that, that are really doing well. And we are expanding. So that was the first challenge that we had to kind of suddenly, it was almost like you're building the bicycle as you're riding it. And the spate of new hires is not stopping, and you still have to kind of get their laptops over to them, get their entire thing configured, onboard them, get them integrated with the organization, make them productive, get their orientation sessions. And I would say that it caught us a bit unawares. And I think we would have probably done a 2 on 10 for the first maybe a month, because it just, like, we just did not know what hit us. And very quickly we kind of got together. And that's the thing about human ingenuity, that no matter what technology you have, you eventually, it's the people who kind of get together and say what blocks of technology we need to. So that's the first thing that we kind of did. Then came this whole issue about keeping the folks engaged and connected. I'm a firm believer that water cooler conversations are such an integral part of any organization. They kind of, that's how culture tends to get disseminated, through water cooler conversations. And we were totally missing those. So we said, okay, how do we do our town halls that was such an integral part of how we would get together in various locations? And then we chanced upon this very exciting technology called Gather Around. I do not know how many of you use that, but it's just phenomenal. You get matched up with, it's a bit like a combination of speed dating and question and answer and coffee with Karan all put together. And it's very interesting. So we started experimenting with different formats. How do we keep the crowd engaged? We started to get kind of various stand-up artists, et cetera, just to kind of make sure that while we are all away in our own homes, at least some of these technologies we are able to kind of put together in a framework and use them effectively. And I would love to use the word seamlessly, but it is so abused, and I wouldn't. That we tried to kind of stop that gap as much as possible. I would say that one thing which this whole pandemic and work from home has done is for us to be able to be very experimentative in our approach and say, all right, what's the worst that can happen? It may not work. Well, it's not working any which ways right now. So let's try that. And the last thing I want to say is that many of you cricket fans would have seen, because I can't talk about the organization that I come from, the biggest jamboree of cricket ever, which is still going on. This organization, I mean, we created a bit of a bio bubble, and all of the technologies that we did not need at some point in time, because it was all happening like right out there on the field, and people were in the office and all technology was there. We had to really better ourselves and help people while they were working from home to be able to do everything. And the last edition of that sport, this edition of that event, all worked out really well. So I think many of these processes that we changed, and I deliberately brought in a business process because it's so important, that brings in the bread and butter, so important. And I think it was, at the end of the day, we were faced with a situation, and I think the entire organization rose up to that occasion. So yeah, those are the three things I would say.
Super. So I'm really glad you brought up a lot of these things about, the need for formal integration and formal processes, going digital, just to, enable and, to keep the business continuity in place, right? Processes like, recruitment, onboarding, and then the important factor around formalizing the informal part of the human connect, right? Which I think is very, very critical. So, I'm happy to hear that, there's a lot of momentum gather around. Definitely one of the things I will check out. I haven't checked it out yet, but I agree. I think that's one of the things that we struggle with as well. So let me then go on to Kartik. Kartik, from your perspective, any new tech innovations, and are you seeing the impact, or do you still see that there is some time to go before you see the impact?
Right. So, first of all, thanks. Great inputs, Nishant. Love the gather around idea. Definitely a takeaway from the first conversation itself. So, I think fundamentally, Rakhee, how we have understood is, the only thing left within companies once pandemic happened was structures, right? Everything else was fluid. And structures and org structures and things that we know sitting at home are like X-ray, right? This guy reports to this guy is in this team, but culture is ultrasound. It's not apparent. You can't see it. There is no blueprint to it. So you don't know sitting at home who's close to whom, right? And the whole idea that you spoke about, informal water cooler conversation, so beautifully put by Nishan, idea was, so every company had leaders, and I think pandemic got influencers to the fore. And every company suddenly realized that leaders alone can't do a lot. There are a lot of influencers in the company who are driving the sentiment of the company. So, and I think we used an amazing tool. I've been using it for the last 2-3 years. I used it in my previous company as well, OrgLens. Right? It's by Santosh Babu, ODA Alternatives. Where the idea of HR is to go from hindsight to insight to foresight, right? So how do you do that? So OrgLens is a very simple tool and great case studies for us. Happy to share insights where they ask you very simple 7 questions. Who do you go to when you want to know what's happening in the organization? Who do you go to if you want to discuss a personal problem? Who do you go to if you want to take a career advice? Right? Who do you go to if you want to share an idea? Very simple 7 questions. And the whole network analysis or the net worth or network density, as it is called, depends on 2 things: frequency and reciprocation. How many times I talk to Nishant and how many times Nishant calls me back, right? And that will decide. Now, what we realized was there are certain people and there are about 7 kinds of influencers that can exist in a culture, and ONA beautifully lays it out. There are bridgers. There are some people who are the bridge between the senior and the junior management. Now imagine I got screwed by Nishant for a bad delivery. I called Rakhee and Rakhee says, it's okay, the manager, now why are you reacting to this? Let's move on. Let's have a smoke or let's have a video drink, right? One influencer, the similar influencer is negative and says, yeah, ghatiya company, I told you I'm also planning to leave. Kuch nahi hone wala hai. 5 times you do this conversation with me, I'll leave. But the guy talking will never leave because he's an influencer. So idea was, how do you catch the sentiment which is driven by not leaders, but influencers who don't show on the structure, right? And it is a great tool. So it also helps you in predicting attrition. So ONA tells you if this person is about to leave, which people in the org system are about to get impacted because they had a personal relationship. If this guy goes, they wouldn't know what's happening in the organization because he was the guy who gave information, and that will create anxiousness, and hence they are also they have a probability to leave. So idea is to identify those patterns, and I think OrgLens in a way was a tool made for this. We used it when at Housing we did 7 mergers and acquisitions. So anytime you're growing inorganically, those power dynamics change. We used it at that time, but I think any kind of disruption causes a change in the people dynamic, and I felt OrgLens is a great tool for it. I genuinely recommend to do read up about this. It's a very simple tool, and you actually identify which are the departments also in silos. So not just espionage. It's technically not espionage. It's effectively knowing who are the people. You can't control 200 people, especially in pandemic, but you can control those 20 people who control sentiment of those 200 people. That's the idea. I hope it helps in some way.
Super. I just love the idea that you're talking about, right? Because even in setup like ours, and consulting is really just about people, right? We don't really have any products to sell. It's all like tacit knowledge. It's all about people, right? And the one thing we struggle with is, the opinion leaders, the influencers, and you somehow just are never able to figure out who those set of people are. So I'm very intrigued by this particular tool. Of course, Santosh Babu should pay you for, publicizing his product, and you should drop a note time for this as well.
I totally agree. I just made a little note to myself right
No,
here.
I can introduce you to Santosh. I think also, guys, the way I genuinely look at it is, I think uh, uh, the real value is how many people get to know about these tools. That's what the session is about.
Yes.
How
No,
many people
absolutely.
can leverage a good practice?
Exactly.
And end goal is, if people in Nishant company is engaged, and it's going to benefit the industry. Imagine the kind of attrition happening in the industry is destabilizing the increment percentages. Believe me, this is a collective failure. If you're happy that some other company is destabilized, it's only time you will fall into that trap.
I completely agree. I'm so glad you brought it up. It's one of those topics which is a little outside the purview of this conversation, but because a lot of HR practitioners and industry leaders, I think it's as big a pandemic from a talent pool acquisition retention perspective than the actual pandemic that we're
We,
facing.
we call it talent heist. Money heist तो नहीं हो रहा है, but पूरा talent heist हो रहा है, where the whole gang of talented people are just
Everybody's
taken
moving
away.
everywhere. Yeah, exactly. I
Well
think only
said.
the
So
top guys
true.
are not going anywhere. I think some of us are not getting jobs. Everybody else seems to be in the market. So no, I thank you. I really appreciate this. I think the idea of this conversation, the session today really was to just understand best practices and learn from one another. And in that same spirit, I think some of the things that we've done at Kearney is that we were already using a lot of our digital platforms earlier because it's a global firm, and we tend to run a lot of our processes across geographies and units. I think some of the things we did was we realized that we really needed to hear what people are saying. So we created what we call a people jam. We created a platform where we said, here's what everybody has this currency, and here are these ideas that we want from you on people, on increments, on these 5 or 6 topics. Go ahead and literally put your money on the ideas and bet on it, right? So if you think we need to have better training and development processes, and you have a literal currency like $100, how much of it do you want to split and give to a particular idea? And through that People Jam platform, we were able to get some very, very creative ideas, and it also actually helped us engage a lot with our employees across the globe. We created what we call a net followership score. So this is not like a 360-degree feedback, which we already have in place. This is more in terms of saying, here's a leader that I have in the firm, and I might not be reporting into this particular person, but I think this person has all the skills, all the values that I would want to imbibe. And is this a leader I want to follow? And people can just go ahead and vote and say, you know what, this is a great leader, I want to follow this leader. So that's the other thing we did. We created a net followership score where people can just go and decide which leaders within the firm, within the unit, they're very excited about following and working with, and so on. And of course, the pulse surveys, which we were doing, once every 6 months, became quarterly, and more surveys, but a lot more action orientation, a lot more driven in terms of what do we need to do, what do we need to change. So a lot more speed, agility kind of came into how we were reacting to the people processes, what we needed to change in terms of the policies, and so on. So super. So just on this particular question, I just wanted to understand, did you face any challenges in terms of integrating some of these new things with the legacy systems that you have, right? So for instance, we have PeopleSoft, a lot of people have Oracle, SAP, and so on. Have you faced any integration challenges, data flow challenges when you do something like this? Nishant or Kartik?
Yeah, I could go first. I would not say challenges. I would say that we had to be mindful of those. So thankfully, in the part of the organization that I am, there are a lot of legacy systems, but the part of the organization that I am a part of, there's a fair bit of new things that are there, like some of the digital technologies, like whether you take a Slack or the entire G Suite, and most of these tools, they tend to have API integrations already built in with those. And because these are very well used sort of tools, and so those integrations were easy for us. So our thing was more about being mindful about the cybersecurity issues and safety issues and those sort of things versus the inability for any technology that we are using to integrate. And most of these technologies, I also think feel that they kind of go and sit on your existing infrastructure. So it's not really that integration in some areas makes a lot of sense. Like, for example, we are just for this referrals where we want to kind of have a really good sense on number of people who are referring qualified people. We introduced this tool called Teamable, and we had to do a fair bit of API integration with our existing lever tool, that is our ATS. So yeah, some of those integrations need to be done. But the good news is that most of these are API sort of integrations. But yes, that does become one criteria in us trying to decide which tool or which technology or which app we are going to use on top of that. So I think it's more being thoughtful about it versus a challenge.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. So on the same lines, then let me go over to Kartik. Kartik, what do you think are some of the challenges that either your organization or any organization faces when it decides that we want to go digital, we want to try new tech, innovations? What do you think are some of the challenges that you've seen?
Yeah, it's a very broad question, but just to probably, I think it's the mindset largely, and I think eventually individual mindsets are a subject of what kind of exposure the organization has had. To be honest, I've worked with UCB, an Italian fashion brand, for 5.5 years, and it was as global and as offline and as traditional as it could be. But my last 7 years, the whole DNA is tech first, right? So to be honest, it's asking how is it to move from Test cricket to T20? It's a different skill altogether. It's a very different DNA altogether. And I think a lot of homework has to start from very early stages. If any kind of change management of this proportion has to happen, right? Why do you think Unilever has not been able to transition into a digital first FMCG? Right, and that's where the biggest disruption is. So I think mindset is the number one challenge, and mindset of the organization, because a lot of what you had designed worked in a certain context. The moment you say that you change the context, how will it change? I think it's a massive transformation. I think it's and again, not just at an employee end, but also at a business end, and that's why probably so. Talk about this, right? The biggest tech innovation in last 10 years is cash on delivery. And it's not a tech innovation, it's a product innovation. Flipkart tried cash on delivery and it unlocked the whole potential of e-commerce market. Now that for me is a massive transition. So for example, you see buy get X, buy X get Y, or B2G1, buy two get one. It's a very nascent and a very old concept of Palika Bazaar or a very local Delhi market, ki do ke saath ek free, and how a lot of these mantras of the world and Bekos of the world were able to tap. I think largely that's there. From a culture point of view, I think you've either, it's difficult for people to work from a conventional to a digital first company. It's a vast change management, if that's what your question was, because it's so wide. I had to just pick one, and I picked people element. There.
I could can I just add something to that? Oftentimes, and I used to work for just like you, Kartik, I used to work for an organization, transnational, but very traditional in its approach, General Motors. Okay, and I used to be a part of a team that was entrusted with, it's a buzzword, right? Global HR transformation. And again, I'm not being facetious about it. We did some really good work, and I'm glad I got that opportunity. But the biggest roadblock were people who were in positions of responsibility and power in the organization. because they have no interest, or unless and until shown otherwise, they don't seem to have an intuitive interest to kind of move into the new technology. And one of the ways in which we had built a case for that was that, see what's happening in the ecosystem. Your employee who is dealing with these archaic system with 20-page manual on how to go and do a job change in the system is doing banking, hard-earned savings on iPad, is booking tickets for shows on internet. We are instead of the organization enhancing that digital experience when the employee walks in to the office, we are actually taking the employee back to 16th century. And I think it was true then, and it is true even right now, that when organizations are embarking on that journey, or at any stage in that journey, I think that becomes a very big thing, that, oh, we'll train and we'll do this. Intuitiveness or lack thereof of technology that we are using, I think, comes as the biggest roadblock. Because how is it that the same employee who, and let's take you and me, we are doing internet banking, we are doing on our phone, we are watching content, we are doing more and more things. The moment we get into organizations, we are bombarded by systems that are like maybe were designed for a world 50 years back. So I think that is but I'm so glad that the whole market is getting flooded with very new sort of technologies up and coming. There's a different challenge for that, and probably another question is in order for that. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of share that perspective with everybody.
No, and couldn't agree more, Nishant. In fact, no one taught my nephew to use Instagram. He just figured his shit out and just
Isn't
went,
it?
and now he has an account. So I think the WIFM, what is in it for me, was so clear that adoption became better, right? And I think one more last point, Rakhee, I think it's also to do with a lot of, so the whole digital first is a problem with us 30, 40 years old. You talk to the next generation, they would find the older ways as a big change management, right? My niece is 3 years old. She falls on the ground. My bhabhi would hit the ground and say, "Gira diya mere bachche ko." The 3-year-old child is getting conditioned. She was right, floor was wrong. That's introduction to feedback in life. And then for 20 years, you get conditioned on how exams were tough, teacher was tough. And when the person arrives at work and you say you have a problem, what do you think the person's reaction is going to be? Right? In schools, you're taught to be an individual contributor. One person will come first. 25 years of mental conditioning to operate like an individual contributor. Person comes to work and say, hey, you know what? Forget, it's teamwork. The brain doesn't understand. You've been trained to operate like an individual contributor. You've been trained to identify, oh, it's raining outside, don't go. You're telling the child, wait for things to be perfect before you step out. So I think a lot of the psychological transformations that happen are as difficult, and hence COVID was a great mirror, right? The digital transformation is a manifestation of the same problem. You and me would have been born in a different era, and hence it's tough. Maybe 10 years later, the debates will be very different. About how do you retain the older good in the digital world will be the conversation 10 years from now, I'm telling you.
Thanks, Kartik and Nishant. The psychologist in me wants to talk a little bit about the social conditioning, but I will refrain to do that. And also the fact that I have a 16-year-old at home who's extremely tech savvy and has an extremely non-tech savvy mother. But I don't want to go down there. That's a personally touchy topic, but I agree.
That's a whole another session, Rakhee.
Yes, absolutely. But yes, I think fundamentally what is happening is that there are these challenges in terms of, not just the age, but the mindset, the way organizations have traditionally worked, and, what we expect people to now suddenly do. And COVID has, of course, accelerated the entire process. What we thought will take another 10 years to come in. I think over, 12, 18-month period, everybody had to, very quickly adapt and adopt to a lot of things, which everyone was thinking will not be possible, right? Could your entire workforce work from home? The question seemed almost moot, because the answer was always no, that's not possible. How do we have everybody work from home? It's not our setup. That's not how we work. So in the same context, I just want to understand from both of you, and let me again come to you, Nishant. How does an organization really figure out they are digitally ready, right? So when we talk about either the need for agility, eye on the turbulence in the future, speed of adoption, what exactly decides that as an organization I'm digitally ready? And I'm not saying pandemic, I'm taking that out, I'm saying now post pandemic. How would we know?
Rakhee, so all of these, but there is a very important factor which I think we're missing, is the customer or consumer. In direct to consumer D2C organization, it's the end consumer. I think we oftentimes, organizations tend to think that the consumer is operating in a silo, whereas fact of the matter is, and marketers know this, we as consumers intuitively know this, that we are all impacted by the macro environment that we are a part of. I'll go back to that example of an employee who is reasonably tech savvy in the outside world in his or her banking or e-commerce, and then suddenly being brought to 16th century tools. Similar sort of a thing, I think, because consumers are being bombarded by various things, and there are connections that are being made without any organization even trying. So I feel that the organizations that are keeping their ear closer to the consumers are the ones that change first and foremost. And I also feel that organizations that are in the space of discretionary spending versus organizations that are in the space of must spend, I just feel that they tend to kind of respond to the changing, not needs, but the changing fashion, the changing anything, changing milieu much faster. So I personally am convinced that nothing more prompts organization to change, but it's really the consumer, and how to have the largest share of the wallet of that consumer for those organizations. And I'm talking specifically about for-profit organizations. I'm not talking about organizations that are out there as non-profits, etc. The other thing, which I think is extremely important to see, is that as consumer preferences are changing, they are largely, there was the beautiful saying back in the day when I was studying that a butterfly is fluttering its wings on Great Wall of China has an impact on some stock exchange somewhere. And I think it really goes on to say that there are connections that are happening in the ecosystem that we are not imposing, that consumers themselves, they want to have convergence, and consumers want to have a seamless sort of an experience, a life that does not prompt them to jump from one area to another, but if it can be all interconnected. If they have, for example, an entertainment need, just this one device, can everything be mobile first? Why do I want to move from my mobile to my another DTH provider to another device, etc.? Can I have everything all in one? Just as an example, right? If I'm going out for an entertainment, why do I have to go over and look for this type of entertainment and this type of entertainment? Can everything be all put together? So I feel it is the consumer that is really at the center of it. Pandemic or anything, it only kind of changes the acceleration of it. There's this beautiful thing called theory of constraints, right? And the whole idea of theory of constraints is that what's the most important limiting factor? So that theory of constraint then accelerates it. I mean, pandemic and the ability of people to move out and come into the office spaces in cases of people who are in HR function was the biggest limiting factor. And that's what we all responded to. So I think it's the consumer need, and all of the other things tend to accelerate change.
Thanks, Nishant. I know we are running a little behind time, but I'm really enjoying this conversation. Let me ask Kartik. We were talking about adoption and adaptation, and at the end of the day, the customer is important, and that's what I understand from what Nishant was saying, that it's really the customer, it's really the top line, the bottom line, that's really deciding how quickly I become digital and what is the value I get out of the digital transformation. But if you were to just talk from the people perspective, what do you think as HR leaders we need to do so that our teams are motivated to adapt and adopt to the changes that the organization requires, or to go digital and to be more tech savvy? What is it that we need to do?
Yeah, so I've worked in all digital first companies. So I've never had this problem because, one, you fix the hiring, otherwise you're already too late. But if you're an organization, I imagine, which you're talking about is moving from a traditional to a digital. So I'll be very honest, in HR, we have pathetic digital products for customers, which is our employees, right? I cannot imagine any HRMS system being super engaging, right? So it's a pull or a push, right? So people go there because there is leave management. People go there because if I don't do my attendance or regularization, I will have a pay cut. So it's a lot of push than a pull. So one is, I think the places where we have really benefited is talent acquisition, for example. Right, a great ATS can make life way better. Now that's a great place where business also sees a lot of value. Right, I can record my comments. I don't need to send any emails. Everything has a history and a trail. So I think what I have learned is if people see value, they will change. And most times, maybe we are not able to show value, or maybe we are not able to get people to kind of change and come out of their comfort zone, right? That's the bigger challenge I've seen. But there are even before pandemic, there is a company called Automatic, which owns 3% of web traffic. It's a $3 billion company. WordPress, I'm sure everyone has heard, is owned by Automatic. It's in 75 countries, 93 language speaking employees, and they have been working remote since day one. And they have a beautiful Maslow's theory of evolution. They have a Maslow's kind of theory of working from home, where they said when pandemic came, everybody was on the 5th level of change management, where all we really focused was transactory HR elements. And then it spoke about, it's a beautiful article. If you want, I can share it with Veer or anyone in the group. But it's a company and they meet once a year. And this company is a $3 billion valuation company, controls world's 3% traffic, and have been work from home since ever. And they believe they're at stage 4. Stage 5 is nirvana, where they can. But there are companies like that who didn't wait for a pandemic to respond, right? So I think very difficult to give a generic answer because every company has its own life and its own problem statements of why that change management is difficult, right? Motivation may not be a problem, right? And problem with HR folks is because I have a hammer, everything is a nail. So kuch bhi change nahi ho raha, अरे पक्का कुछ तो people problem hai. But I've realized, fundamentally, organizations have been designed on theory of reductionism. There was a complex problem of running an organization. So मैंने क्या किया, finance के लिए CFO आएगा, sales के लिए sales head आएगा, operations के लिए ops head आएगा, CTO tech head के लिए आएगा, और people तो HR आएगा. So now what has happened is we identify and over stress on people as key reason for not changing, but maybe systems is the problem. Right, and that's where sociology comes in, and that's what we are actively working on. that I can be somebody with all due respect. In India, we see littering on roads so normal, but overnight someone goes to Dubai and stops it. What happened? Your system and your environment changed, and overnight you had to change your behavior. So I think change management is oversimplified as a concept. I think it's a multi-headed devil, and hence there is no one answer. I'm saying you'll have to look at every problem as a unique problem, and instead of becoming a consultant, I think you'll have to become a coach. Each player is different, each problem is different, and that's the fundamental difference. So in these sessions, I am being conscious and aware that I don't end up becoming a consultant, wherein I'm giving you very broad, generic strokes, which may not work for you, and say, "Yaar, ye kya bol ke gaya na?" Because I'm calling out कि ये बहुत broad है. आपको diagnosis करना पड़ेगा, समझना पड़ेगा change management में क्यों problem हो रहा है. Is it the problem on the top? It's the influencers, it's the system, it's the context, it's the motivation, it's the reason for change, and then fix it. I don't know if it made sense, but I'm saying that's the reality.
Can I just add one thing over here? And it's almost like a request, and I'm trying to find opportunities to do that in my organization too. We've heard a lot about this buzzword called gamification. More and more, I am becoming a bit of a convert around gamification. And it emanates from the same thing, that what we see outside of the organization, and we engage with that so much, there is no reason why, if presented in the right manner, we won't be able to engage. And I would encourage everybody to kind of think about even small attempts at gamifications. To what Kartik was talking about, that HRMS and the pathetic. I agree, but think about some of these equally cumbersome sort of processes, like recognition scheme. Go put your recommendation. It's like one boring form. How gamification has just changed that. In fact, some of the best ATSs, some of the best performance systems are becoming highly gamified. And I think I would urge everybody to probably take that one concept, gamification, read up a little bit about it, actually quite a bit about it, and try to use it in one small, low-risk process to just kind of get a hang of that. But I think in that human psychology thing, and again, we're kind of digressing, sorry, but I do feel that is one concept, gamification of various processes, especially people processes, that can transform them from mundane to probably, if not exciting, but hey, I wouldn't mind doing it. So just something that I wanted to share, because I am beginning to get very excited about this whole concept of gamification.
Super. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Kartik said, and at different levels, you actually have to see, and figure out, what is it that's working in the organization from people, process, culture perspective before you decide, what motivations are at play and what exactly do you need to do in terms of, helping people understand the VIFM of it, right? What's in it for me? Why do I need to change my skills? Why do I need to change my motivations? Or why do I need to work differently? I think a lot of it is really top down, right? I mean, if the leadership team is convinced, if there is a real case study for digital transformation or digitization, so to say, to happen, right? Like gamification is one of the things that, one could possibly be looking at, or even looking at different kinds of platform to, work on rewards and recognition, or, simpler, faster, agile systems that are interactive, that are easy in the sense that they have flexibility around it, but they're also robust enough to stand the test of time. I think those are some of the things that make digital very, very exciting for many of us. So no, thank you so much, Kartik and Nishant, for your perspective. I think we're a little over time. So last, any closing comments from both of you in terms of how do you see the next 12 to 18 months panning out in terms of, what do you think are some exciting technologies? And, we've talked about quite a few, but if you were to just pick one and say, I'm going to put my money on this, what technology do you think would change your entire people function? And that's something that, you're excited and looking forward to.
Rakhee, I gamification would be one not a particular technology, but it's a bit of a mindset. In fact, I am going to reach out to a friend of mine who is into it. His company's called Unbox. I haven't said a hello to him in a very long time, but he's doing some great work. I keep on seeing his WhatsApp status updates, doing some great work. So that's one thing that I'm very excited about. I do want to give a word of caution, and it's a word of caution for all of us. I'm not here to pontificate, certainly not in such an August and season gathering here. But I feel that in our digital journeys, and each organization will have its own unique journey, right? I don't think it's about the technology availability. I think the technology is available in abundance, probably too much in abundance. I'm sure, just like me, each individual here receives a message about, hey, this is the technology we use. Can we have a meeting with you? This is how we will be able to help you, etc. I think it is going to be that experience layer that you put on top of all of that technology. Because let's face it, none of us want to interact with 50 different tools to do 50 different tasks. None of us want to do that, right? If it's all about integration, convergence, and seamlessness, we want one experience layer, and you have whatever number of tools you want to use for whichever process. But my experience layer for the employee is very important. So I want to urge, this is for all of us as a fraternity, to be very mindful of tool or technology proliferation. While on one hand, we need to be very conscious of that, let's not bring in technology that was built 20 years back, 30 years back. Let's go with the new stuff. But there is so much new stuff that we just have to be super mindful of that. So that would be one thing that I would caution all of us against as a community.
Thanks, Nishant. Thanks. Kartik, for you, one particular technology that can transform your people function that you're looking forward to?
I think adoption more than technology. I think Nishant just probably said the most beautiful thing of the whole session, right? That it's so overcrowded that everybody claims that their technology is going to change the culture of the company. I think, and you see that everywhere. I think Fire Stick, for example, is a great way. What Nishant is technically talking about is exactly that. Can I get something that gives me something of everything, right? And we're talking about a share chat of employee experience. I hope someone is thinking, what a great business idea, Nishant. Your idea could be the next biggest product in HR. Wow. Just realize this is such a great idea.
Now I just have to plan my retirement. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let the royalties bring in.
Yeah, but completely agree. I think more is adoption. There is enough and more already there. I don't think we need, no new technology is going to come and save us. I think one is adoption, and second, knowing when to say no to it. I think AI could be interesting. It's a super unexplored, untested area. I super enjoy Swiggy's chat bot where I don't have to interact, and super intuitive, right? Great. I love the personalization happening on our website. So I was talking to a data scientist who spoke about that if I buy an onion shampoo today, and if I go to Purple, Nykaa, or MYGlamm tomorrow, the system understands this person has bought, and unless this person comes back before 35 days, we don't need to show him onion shampoo. But 36th day, I know shampoo would have finished, and onion shampoo needs to come on top. Now, how beautifully, so much personalization for customers, so little for employees. I guess maybe that's the answer.
No, thanks, Kartik. I know there is this predictive and prescriptive analytics that, a lot of our, retail guys seem to be doing a great job of. But somehow it's something, we just don't do enough in our organizations, right?
Because it doesn't give you direct money. That's the problem. It's so indirect return on investment that you don't put a buck to it.
Yeah, I think there's also some confusion still going on in terms of, is automation really digital? Is digital really AI or MI? What does that mean? And again, I think the barrier is really in terms of a lot of our teams thinking, if I want to go digital, if I really want to use the AI tools, it's going to mean a lot more work from me in terms of, data input and, just trying to get the insight means a lot more input going in. But I like the idea if there's an integrated solution that Nishant was saying that, you could provide to HR leaders, it'll make life so much easier, right? One-stop shop, which gives you everything. And, you don't have to keep going around trying to figure out, how to make things work. But yeah, I think we're still some years from that. Kartik, business opportunity there. Maybe you, me, and Nishant need to catch offline and start working on that idea. So that's a good thing. But thank you so much. I've had a very, very interesting conversation with the both of you, and I'm really hoping that our participants enjoyed this. And I wish we had some more time. We could have kind of had some more discussions. And I was very happy to hear about some of these organizations that are doing great job, MYGlamm. And you're talking about Unbox, the whole gamification piece that we were talking about. So some great stuff out there if organizations really want to go digital and want to enhance the employee experience and also the end client experience. But the call outs, like Nishant and Kartik said, one, adoption is more important. Thinking through what do you really need and what's the value associated with it. Is this something which gives you a competitive advantage, or is it something that you're just doing? Is it a flash in the pan that makes you look good? Those are some things that you need to think about. And it has to be driven top down for it to get adopted and for people to adapt to it a lot faster. I see there's a poll that's come up. Please rate the speakers on delivery and content. My God, this is what you call immediate direct feedback for folks. Rajni, you should have told us about this earlier.
No, I didn't make a mention. This poll is generally for the audience.
Okay, all right. So while this is going on, there are some questions, that are there in the chat box, and we can very quickly try and address some of those. There is one which says that on one hand, we consider India to be a cheap labor market, and on the other, we talk of digital transformation, which comes with a cost. Would like to understand the thoughts of the esteemed panel on this trade-off. So digital transformation coming at a cost versus India being a cheap labor market. Do you think there is a trade-off, or is this something we should be concerned about at this stage?
I don't know if I'm qualified to make serious comments on that, but I just, again, whenever I'm looking for answers inside, I tend to look outside and try and see what is applicable. Think about an average internet technology user in our country today. The most astute users are actually not in my vicinity. They are actually, when I go over to my village in central Uttar Pradesh, they are the most astute users, and I look at them and say, oh my God, I didn't even know that this particular technology could have this use case as well. And I think if you look at, there used to be a huge digital divide, India versus Bharat, and I think there's still a little bit of that. But I think the way the Bharat segment in our country is latching on to the technology, some of it abusing as well, but that's not the fault of a technology or adoption. It's about the individual. But I feel that cheap digital markets and digital transformation, unfortunately, whenever we think about digital transformation, we probably think about these really expensive Western, American, European technologies. I think digital transformation is really about, it's a mindset, it's a thinking. And we are seeing a lot of these technologies, really cheap technologies. Who would have thought that Bheem would be a pay app that would be so successful? Or, my Sabziwala never in this pandemic took like cash money at all. So I just kind of feel that it's a bit of a misnomer. I don't think it's not a reality. It is a reality, but I think it's a misnomer that India is a cheap labor market, and therefore digital transformation always has to be an expensive proposition. I just challenge that thinking.
Okay. All right, let me pick up some, and I'm just doing this randomly. There are a lot of very good questions, and maybe we can some of the folks can reach out to us later as well. Do you think digital divide exists? If yes, how can India's policymakers take action to strategically lead people towards digital transformation or inclusion? Very heavy, loaded question.
And
See,
I'm going
this
to keep my
is
mouth shut on this.
yeah, this is above our pay grade.
So to speak.
So, and you can do a lot of intellectual masturbation on this, but I don't think we would be able to really
I hope there
answer.
are no minors in the group, or
Not really.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But I think fundamentally it's a much larger problem. Digital India is a very big campaign, and I think uh, also I think I think Nishant has been just pouring out gems out of, right, the amount of adoption in tier 2, tier 3 with Geo, and the kind of shopping experience we have seen is crazy. And second thing, I think it may be a little unfair to compare cheap labor to digital transformation. Both are solving very two different problem sets. But as you rightly said, even from a kirana wala to a sabzi wala is taking Paytm and Google Pay today, right? So I think everybody has benefited, and the divide is actually coming close. And digital is helping in that. Truly see that in my maid's payment monthly, to my sabzi wala payment, and to as techno savvy as buying a mobile online, right? So I don't think, in fact, this is, I actually think opposite of what is being asked.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to take one last one here, and then, if there's anything else Rajni wants us to take up, we can take up. What can organizations do to foster the true spirit of high tech with high touch?
Sorry, what was that?
What can organizations do to foster the true spirit of high tech with high touch?
Let me go first.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you, Kartik.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think thanks for that question. And I think this gets talked about a lot. That technology, it almost seems like, is diametrically opposite to personalization or personal touch. And I think it, again, I'm not dissing the question. So whoever asked, I'm not dissing the question. I'm just saying that I would encourage you to think differently. That technology and high touch are not two different things. In fact, there would be people who would tell you that they have the most sane conversations on different forums. My wife's a member of Gurgaon Moms, for example, has been for many years now when we moved to Gurgaon the first time. And I think some of the conversations are most enriching conversations out there. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer, as far as I think and what I have seen, that high touch is an antithesis of high tech. Again, I'm kind of playing like a broken record, but look outside of the organization. How our lives are high touch with high tech. And my challenge is for all of us, why can't the same sort of thing happen over here? Now, does that mean that you will never have any human being? I think it's very frustrating sometimes to just kind of, be on a call or on internet with a chatbot. It can be very frustrating. But I think the tier 1 support, tier 2 support, tier 3 support, with the help of AI, and then later on ML to assist that, I think a lot of high touch and high tech can go hand in hand. That's how I feel about it. And I think it's a bit of our mindset that tends to put them as, it's like that work-life balance. That work-life balance means less work and more life. And I just think that it's so integrated these days that these are a bit artificial dichotomies that we tend to become victims of.
No, and I think what technology is like a knife. If it's in hand of a doctor, it will save life. If it's in hand of a thief, it will take it.
Very well said.
So I don't think it's the problem is technology. Problem is leveraging and adoption of it. The moment I use it to connect, I can connect. The moment I over-index on it, I disconnect with people. So I'm sure all of us had days when our partners would have said, drop that phone, talk to me, right? And there would be days that because we were in two different cities during pandemic, This technology was the way I could talk to my mom. So I don't think it's a villain or a hero. I think people using it, will have to really be smart about it.
True. No, well said, Kartik and Nishant. And coming from my experience of seeing, high tech over the last 2 years, I think for us, it really helped us continue the high touch, which, we might have lost otherwise. And, typical to consulting where, most consultants are not in the office and you don't get to see them otherwise. I think for technology turned out to be a huge boon for us because we actually got to see a lot of our people who we were basically seeing, once in 2 years when we did the offside, or we got 200, 500 people together. But here at the click of a button, I was actually able to see all of these people have great conversations, see how their living rooms were, meet up with their families, actually, their kids. We had some great celebrations where, we had Mother's Day, Father's Day, and the kids were also there. And, you could say, oh, this is your dad's boss, and he's the guy he's been abusing all this time, and so on, right? So we saw a lot of great fun stuff that technology helped us do, which we could not do earlier because, people could say, oh, I'm on a client side, I can't fly down for this. Now you don't have a choice, right? You're there. I mean, you have to switch on and of course, there were days when you died because you just had too much of, personal connect on the video. So I think for us, it was a enabler. But yeah, you have to detox after a little while, like Kartik said. Partners want you to have conversations. In my case, my dog wants to have a conversation. Everybody else is very happy to not see me the whole day. So yes, but thank you so much. Rajni, I think we are on the dot, on the hour. If you think, I see 121 participants have still continued with us. Thank you so much. I think we've had a very exciting conversation. If you guys want us to take up 1 or 2 more questions, happy to do that, or we can call it a day. And if you want to reach out to either Kartik, Nishant, or me, or anybody else, please reach out to the AMA team, and they'll connect you to all of us. The team has actually put up a slide now saying thank you for joining us, which means that we will conclude the session today. But thank you so much. Very, very happy to have this conversation, and I hope that all of you took away something. I know there were a lot of other questions, but some of them were really above all our pay grade. I don't know what community can do to help digitalization and so on, but
I have a request. If Rajni, maybe you have the access, or Rakhee, there were some really good comments also outside of questions, and I was trying to kind of look through those. I would love to be able to see those, at least personally, I would love to be able to see those and kind of get some thoughts going on for our benefit. If it's possible to send that would be good.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank
Super
you.
helpful. Yeah.
Super. Rajni, back to you. Thank you so much, Kartik. Thank you so much, Nishant. I hope we continue to stay in touch and work on our business endeavor. I'm very excited about that. It's a Friday evening. Let me give back the evening to people. They can go get sloshed, spend time with their family, but generally stay safe. Rajni, back to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Nishant, Kartik.
Thank you.
Thanks
to
Core HRI Group for helping us put this together. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. Bye. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.